Hi, Josh Steimle coming to you from Shenzhen, China, and this video is in response to Patrick from Germany who asked me, he says, thanks for the latest videos on YouTube and wondered if you'd ever thought about learning Mandarin or Cantonese. And so I was in Hong Kong for 3 years, and we've been in mainland China for about 4 months now. And the answer is when I was in Hong Kong, I really wanted to learn Cantonese. I speak Portuguese fluently. I loved learning that language. I love languages generally. I've dabbled with learning French and Italian. I speak Spanish okay. I can understand most of it. And when we moved to Hong Kong, I really wanted to learn Cantonese. But there were two problems. One, I don't have that much time to put into learning a language. I'm running a business. I'm writing books, I'm writing articles. I just didn't have the time to put into Cantonese. Two, I couldn't justify the time. Even if I had the time, I couldn't justify it because Cantonese is a language that is mostly only spoken in Hong Kong. There are people who have immigrated from Hong Kong. It's also spoken in Guangdong province, which is the southern part of China, but not so much in the big cities. So I'm in Shenzhen here, which is in Guangdong. It's on the southern part of China. It's right across the border from Hong Kong. And there are millions of people here, but most of the people don't speak Cantonese. They're speaking Mandarin on a day-to-day basis. So if I learned Cantonese, really the only place I would use that would be probably in Hong Kong. And when I'm doing business in Hong Kong, everybody speaks English. And when you go around Hong Kong and you try to get anything done, even if I spoke Cantonese to people, because I did learn a little bit of it, when I'd speak Cantonese to people, they'd still speak English back to me. So the only times I found people who wouldn't speak English back to me was at 7-Eleven and in the taxis. So Cantonese just wasn't that useful of a language to use, and so I couldn't justify putting the time into it. But when I moved across the border into Shenzhen, I thought, okay, this is my chance to be immersed in a place where they're speaking Mandarin. And this is something that is really useful. I mean, we can see the world gravitating towards three languages, English, Spanish, and Mandarin. And I've got the English, I've pretty much got the Spanish. And I thought, if I don't learn Mandarin after living in China for a couple of years, I'm going to be kicking myself for the rest of my life. So one of my priorities was to learn Mandarin, to get serious about it when I moved to China. And I looked into all sorts of different classes. There are universities here, so I looked at going and enrolling in classes. I looked at intensive language programs where you go for 3 months and you're pretty much isolated and you're studying all the time. That wasn't realistic for me. I'm running a business. I've got a family. I'm not going to go live somewhere for 3 months and do full-time Mandarin classes there. Also, the university classes weren't that attractive to me because I don't do that well in classroom situations. I don't want to move at the same speed as the class. I might want to go faster. I might want to go slower. I might have more questions. Maybe I don't want to learn what they're learning. Maybe I don't see the utility in the words, the vocabulary that they're learning. Maybe I want to learn business language. So I didn't want to do the class thing. And it wasn't that cheap either. So I started looking at getting a one-on-one tutor, and I found that the price for hiring a one-on-one tutor for a few hours a week was pretty much the same cost as signing up for a class. And then with a tutor, I could say, hey, this is what I want to focus on. I want to learn these business terms, or I want to study this today, or I want to focus on this for the next few lessons. And I had that flexibility. So also, the tutor comes to my house, so I don't have to go somewhere. I don't have to spend time commuting. So I hired a one-on-one tutor, and it's 2 women. They run this company. They have about 20 people. They're training the VP of Samsung here in Shenzhen. So I thought, okay, this sounds like they're pretty well qualified. And I got some personal recommendations to work with them, and they've been fantastic. So they come over 3 times a week. Well, one or the other of them comes over 3 times a week. I do 2 hours each session, so I get in 6 hours a week. And I am really bad at doing my homework because I get busy with the business. So all I've been doing is the 6 hours a week plus whatever interaction I get out in the real Chinese world, which isn't that much because most of the time I'm working from home or I'm associating with other people who speak English. So I don't get a lot of on-the-street practice. It's just here and there. And I've been really happy with the results. I think it's a lot easier to learn your third language because once you learn your first language, for me that was Portuguese, once you learn your first language, I think your brain understands how to learn languages. And so when I've been studying Mandarin, I don't get hung up on a lot of the things that I did get hung up on when I was learning Portuguese. And I'm finding that despite not doing nearly as much work learning Mandarin as I did learning Portuguese, I feel like I'm making faster progress on Mandarin than I ever did learning Portuguese. I feel like it's coming to me a lot easier. And some of that might be the language too. Mandarin, there's no conjugation. It's actually a pretty simple language. The hard part is just lots of vocabulary, and you can't read the characters because it's not a phonetic language. So you can't just sit down with the book in English and the book in Chinese and go back and forth and learn it that way. It takes a bit more work to really get into those characters. The characters are tough, but I've been learning those too, and it's been a lot of fun. I'm really excited with the progress that I'm making. It's not to the point where I can go out and just have a conversation with somebody on the street, but I can speak to taxi drivers, I can speak at the restaurant, I can kind of get my point across if I get stuck in a difficult situation, and it's been a lot of fun to learn. It's not particularly valuable to me in the business, except that if you speak any Chinese at all to people here, they get really excited about it. And you just say hello to them, ni hao, and they'll be like, oh, your Chinese is so good. And you're like, I said one word, I said hi. And they get really impressed if a foreigner takes any time or effort to learn the language. So you do get a benefit that way from studying the language. So some of the apps that I've found really helpful have been Plico, which is kind of a dictionary and it does translation, but it's got a ton of stuff in there. So Plico has been really handy for me. Another one I love is called Memrise, not Memorize, but Memrise, Memrise. And that one's great for learning basic words, characters, pronunciation. It's a very fun app. It's very well designed. It's free. At least I think it's free. Maybe there's a paid version of it, but if there is, then it's pretty cheap. But Memrise has been great. Another one that's really good for learning characters is called Skritter, and this one costs $100. I can't remember if it's $100 one time or $100 a year, but it's definitely not free. But Skritter is really good for learning the characters, and also it has audio in there, so you do learn some of the pronunciation as well as you're learning those. So those have been my three favorite apps: Plico, Skritter, and Memrise. And the other big one is Google Translate. Google Translate has gotten better and better to the point where it really is a very valuable app when it comes to dealing with languages. So those are four of my favorites. There are a few others that I dabble with here and there, but those are the ones that I've gotten the most value out of. So my goal is that a year from now, I want to be able to give a 20-minute business presentation fully in Mandarin. Maybe with notes, maybe with some pinyin to help me along, and maybe I'll have to rehearse that, but I want to be able to stand up and give a 20-minute business presentation at a conference or something like that and have people understand what I'm saying. Native Chinese people say, oh, this guy speaks Chinese. And maybe I wouldn't do too well with a Q&A afterwards, but if I can just get up and give that presentation and know what I'm saying, I'll feel like the investment was definitely worth it. So that's where I'm at with Chinese. I'll put some links to those apps in the notes below. Thanks.